Over this last week, I've struggled with feelings of flatness. I've been outwardly busy and I've met all my deadlines and I've done everything that everyone has expected me to do, or at least everything that I'd committed to do. I'm sure there are plenty of people who were still hoping for a bit more from me, but inside I felt quite flat and empty. I was even trying to do some advanced preparation for next week, but found that both ideas and motivation were in short supply. I read an article at the start of the week by a woman who was describing the 6-month wall that she always faces when she's working on a project. I haven't been able to find the article since, and I can't remember the name of the writer. But she wrote about a period of 2 or 3 weeks at the 6-month mark where she feels flat and unenthusiastic and uninspired, and she described the lack of creative output she experiences at those times. She then talked about lockdown and how we are all at the 6-month mark. And maybe some of us are facing that wall at the moment. She urged her readers to be kind to themselves and not to panic or beat themselves up about the lack of creativity that they may be struggling with. She assured us that this too will pass. It's part of a natural cycle, and soon we will come out the other side, even if that might not happen quite as quickly as we would like. Over the last couple of days, I felt particularly anxious because I haven't had a clear idea about what to say in my weekly reflections, and I could feel the deadline looming. Yesterday, I was getting a bit frantic about it, and I was madly questioning everything I did to see if I could think of something spiritual to say on the topic of hanging out the washing or taking the dog for a walk or cleaning the bathroom or even putting the heating on because it was so cold. I'm sure there may be times when all of those things could be a topic for my weekly reflections, but this isn't the week. As I was lying in bed last night, I realised that I needed to write about the flatness and the emptiness and not try to pretend that they're not there or that I'm not experiencing them at the moment. I'm reminded of the section of the Camino de Santiago called the Meseta. This is a long stretch of vast plains that continue as far as the eye can see, and it takes many days to cross them. People often describe this as the hardest part of the Camino. You're walking on flat footpaths with expanses of fields growing cereal crops all around you, and there are very few landmarks or identifying features for you to focus on. You can walk for a whole day, over 20 miles, and still feel that you're not making any progress because nothing in the landscape has changed. You pass few villages, and you have to make wise decisions about where to stop for food and drink or accommodation. Many pilgrims choose to skip this part of the journey and to take a bus or train to the city of Leon, from which point the terrain is much more varied. One of Graham's worst days came when we were walking through the Meseta. We were tired, but we'd seen a sign that indicated that we got about 12 kilometres to go until we reached the small village of Hontanes, where we had planned to try and find beds for the night. It should have taken us about 2 hours to walk that distance, but we'd been walking for longer than that, and there was no sign of any habitation in sight. It was really hot, and we were running low on water, and unusually for him, Graham was nearing exhaustion. This time I was the one who had to try and keep him going. It was usually the other way round. But I was so relieved when we came to a dip in the road that was imperceptible from a distance, and in this dip, almost in hiding, was the village we were looking for. Having felt like one of the worst days, it quickly became one of the best, as we experienced generous hospitality, a really blessed communal pilgrim meal, and an open church that provided an oasis of cushions, candles, Bibles in many languages, and reflective stations for pilgrims who needed a holy space in which to grapple with the issues that the Meseta raises. There is an awareness that the monotony of walking across these plains enables the pilgrim to focus on their inner journey, and it can be painful to process and deal with the things that are brought to mind under the hypnotic regularity of your footsteps and the flatness of the path. I can understand why some people always seem to want to be living in some kind of crisis. If something dramatic is happening, even if it's terrible, there are people who thrive on this. The adrenaline kicks in, and I'm sure there are many other associated highs that come from feeling like you're the centre of attention or that you're going through something that nobody else is dealing with. Some people will always choose the dramatic highs and lows over the plod across the plains. But actually, I think the plod is just as difficult to cope with. Endless stretches where every day seems the same things to do or not to do, the same people to encounter or the same lack of people to encounter, the same four walls. And even if we do have choices about where to go and what to do and who to see, there are still times when emptiness strikes and we have to find a way through it. Ernest Hemingway, in A Movable Feast, wrote, "I knew that everything good and bad left an emptiness when it stopped. But if it was bad, the emptiness filled up by itself. If it was good, you could only fill it by finding something better." I'm not sure why the emptiness hit me this week, but I do think it's predominantly because of the ending, temporarily or permanent, of good things. I think the feelings of loss that all began to surface a few weeks ago, both added to and triggered by the death of Sparky, are still there. Grief over a much-loved dog, over temporary separation while Graham is working abroad, over my son away at uni, who I've seen only for a matter of hours since Christmas, over the emptiness of the house during the day while my other son and daughter are out and in their own routines, over distance from family and close friends. All of these things feel very near at the moment. Then there's the loneliness of work, the uncertainty of the COVID-19 situation, and the feelings of being in between. Are we heading for another lockdown or not? The desire for change and growth in church life, with the sinking feeling that nothing really has changed there, and the frustration that in the last couple of weeks other demands have squeezed out space for rest and relaxation, and my creativity seems to be at an all-time low. All of these things have shaped the flatness and the emptiness that have marked this last week. I think it's important to acknowledge those feelings when they come. Everyone feels flat and empty at times, and I think it helps to name the things that make you feel this way. But it's important too, not to wallow in it or get stuck in it. The Meseta seems endless when you're walking it, but eventually you do come out the other end. I think these troughs mark our Christian experience as well as our more general experience of life. We don't live on the mountaintop. If you look at a mountain, the top is often bare and barren, and things just don't grow up there. Although from the top, the views are spectacular. Real growth happens when we come down from the mountain and get on with learning how to cultivate that closeness with God, that onward journey with Jesus every day. Real growth happens when we learn to intentionally create those spaces for the Holy Spirit to touch us and live in us. Real growth happens when, despite the ordinariness, or perhaps even monotony of our daily routine, we can open our eyes to the blessings and gifts of the Spirit, and we can acknowledge that God is still with us, treading the path alongside us, no matter how flat it may seem. Last week, I shied away from the emptiness. I tried to ignore it, then I tried to pull myself together, and then I tried to pretend that it wasn't happening, and surely God has some amazing and insightful things for me to write about that cover up the big hole. This week feels different. This week, I know I need to embrace it in a different way. I need to acknowledge and attend to it, and I need to ask God to show me what I can learn as I continue through it. Despite these feelings of loneliness and emptiness and loss, I know that I'm not alone because God is with me. I know that I'm not empty because the Holy Spirit fills me. And I know that the pain of loss is always ultimately full of the potential for transformation. I know these things, even though it may take a little while for the feelings to catch up. So this week, I'm asking God to give me a new perspective on this empty wilderness, this vast and featureless plain. I'm asking that by journeying through it, no matter how long it might take, I will find that it is a place for rest, for fresh encounters with the Holy Spirit, and for a deeper understanding both of myself and of the God who loves me. The path may seem to be stretching a long way ahead. The landmarks appear to be few, and I have no idea how long these plains will last. But Jesus walks this journey with me, and I know that in him I will find all that I need to see me through.